Hello, School Transportation Nation. It is Tony Corbin with you this week, talking all things school transportation, along with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Gray. Ryan, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Nation. It's always great to be with you.
All right, Nation, we got some great headlines this week. We got some loading and unloading zone survey data talking about the unfortunate things of fatalities, what it means to the industry, some interesting takeaways from that. We got a School Bus Safety Month, so we got more details on that. I know you heard of School Bus Safety Week, but this is the month, as well as we've got Department of Ed. There's big headlines coming out there on what that's going to look like, the future. So Ryan's going to really break it down, and we're going to dive deep into this. And we want to thank our sponsors, TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing, Ride, real innovation delivered with excellence, and School Radio, your source for reliable radio communications. So a little later this episode, our own Taylor Ekbatani, senior editor, is going to be talking with Cassidy Miller, transportation director at Cashmere School District in Washington, along with Bowen Mitchell, transportation director at Entiat School District in Washington as well. We got a lot of Washington love there with Taylor. So keep an eye on this episode for a conversation in just a little bit. All right, Ryan, let's get to the top headlines.
Absolutely. So the annual National Loading and Unloading Survey that dates back to 1970. Kansas State Department of Education manages that project and unveiled the latest data at the NASDIP's annual conference a couple weekends ago out in Pentagon City, Virginia, right there on the doorsteps of D.C. So now, again, with this report, and as I said, it dates back to 1970 when the Kansas Department of Transportation initiated it. Some years later, the State Department of Education took it on. And what this report does, Tony, is it looks at police reports of crashes involving school buses and pedestrians, the students in the loading and unloading zone. So that danger zone, if you will. And of course, there's a lot of industry attention on illegal passing, but this survey over the 55 or 56 years of data, or whatnot, 60 years, has shown that there's actually been more fatalities by the children's school bus than there have been from passing motorists. About 56.5%, 57% caused by the school bus. And in the 24-25 school year, that held true again. It was actually all 6 fatalities that were recorded based upon these police reports were students who were killed by their school bus. Now, we know that there's more fatalities than that. There's certainly injuries that are not being tracked. But again, this is reporting based upon the school bus being on the scene and certain criteria that the police reports record. So again, we try to report on any fatality that's, kids that are maybe pedestrians that are walking to school, they get hit by the bus. Those aren't part of this report. Where if there's children that are walking to the school bus and the school bus isn't there, those aren't a part of this report. So we know that there's more data out there. We try to report on that in stnonline.com and in the magazine. But for this report, certainly it shows that, yes, illegal passing is a big issue, but we can't forget about the role that the school bus and the school bus driver play. And some of these instances, Tony, were children stopping or running back to pick up a dropped item or chasing after the bus starts pulling away. And it's, such a tough job being a school bus driver to, be managing the students on board while you're also managing the traffic flow. You're at the school bus stop. I don't know how you all do it in the nation. It would cause such anxiety for me. I mean, I would be such a nervous Nelly trying to pull away from the school bus stop. You talk to driver trainers and a lot of safety consultants, and they discuss the procedures. And every state and a lot of districts do things differently. I mean, the school bus stop starts, if you will, from the moment that the yellow lights are activated when the bus is approaching the stop, and how, there's certain distances and every state's a little bit different. And so there's just so much that goes into that. And this report has been such a hallmark in the industry for really driving training for drivers, if you will. And so many lessons to be learned. And we look at how this survey has played a role in improving stop safety, where you go back to 1970 and you had dozens of children being killed a year at school bus stops. And now we have about a half dozen. And of course, that's a half dozen too many. And certainly no consolation to those parents and those communities that lost these young kids. But it just reminds us of how important that safety training is. Yes, illegal passing is a problem, but we need to look at the data, essentially. And this shows us that still school buses and school bus drivers, they have a role that's being played in these students being killed. And another note, like I mentioned, these don't track injuries, but we know that like on board, there are way more injuries. So it gives the industry hopefully some perspective to look at these types of studies and look at their own operations, look at their own driver training, and see what holes might need to be addressed.
Yeah, I took a peek at it and I thought 6 was low.
Yeah,
I thought, wow, that's a really low number. And so I was having a chat with Jeff Castle over at the School Bus Safety Company, and he pointed out exactly what you did is the majority of these actually were boys that were running after the school bus and fell. So it comes back to, are we training the students not to run after the school bus? In the moment, they don't think about it because they're little kids, but the reality is that seems to be the pain point. And, when I saw the number, I was like, you know what? I'm going to the search function of stnonline.com and I'm typing in fatalities, because we look at fatalities and I see them almost every week. Now, they don't necessarily always happen in the loading and unloading zone, but they're happening, right? So a bus rolls over, that doesn't count. There was a bus accident, that doesn't count. Somebody gets hit at a school bus stop, that doesn't count, right? So there are other fatalities that are happening. So don't give yourself a false sense of that fatalities aren't happening around or on or in the proximity of a school bus, because they are. It's just this particular study identifies one silo of kind of issues. The other question that Jeff and I talked about is if there was a crossing gate on these buses or not. It's not necessarily clear. Mm-hmm. And if there was a crossing gate, could that have prevented some fatalities in this situation? Maybe so. So it becomes more of this data point of how are we doing as an industry? And I'm sure media will pick up on it. 6 is a pretty small number in the grand scheme of things. If you're benchmarking roughly 500,000 school buses on the road, roughly, that is a very large, and considering it's 25 million rides a day one way each day. Mathematically, it's way out there percentage wise. So I'm sure that's got an immaculate safety record in comparison to what other vehicles have out there. So it's just an observation I made.
Yeah, and actually, in terms of rides, so the 25 million is actually the number of the students that the industry and the federal government and states have long cited as the number of students riding school buses, and that actually is probably a little high. And I know, sort of on another subject, NCST is looking at that after a column I wrote a couple years ago, looking at the Federal Highway Family Travel Survey that the Federal Highway Administration does. But anyways, you're right. There's just a lot to glean on these things, and looking at the data of what these surveys say, and to note that 4 states did not respond. So were there some fatalities in those states? We'd have to cross-reference that with, again, just doing a Google search or searching on stnonline.com. But noting again that these police reports are very finite and they have to be very specific on what they're reporting. So these are based upon a school bus on scene. And again, that doesn't always jibe with what's actually happening out on the nation's roads. But I just come back to, training. And you're right, Tony, when that training, it extends to the students. And kids being kids, you can tell them 15 times, 25 times, 150 times, and they might still not do the right thing. But it's just like with the drivers, it's just repeatedly hammering in that message, and to the parents as well, because the parents play a role in this, in educating their kids, because the parents have them up until, and a lot of times up until the point where the school bus shows up. So what's the parents' involvement in teaching them proper school bus loading and unloading etiquette?
Yeah, there's some great points in there, Ryan. And I do believe that, this is a bigger topic that's going to be addressed. I know the Fed is looking at kind of that click it or ticket Super Bowl level campaign. So we're going to talk a little more about that in just a second after these messages. We're back from STN Expo West, and what a blast the TransFinder team had meeting everybody. They held several classes, had an amazing response to their ride and drive, showcasing their award-winning driver app, Wayfinder. One of the highlights was the top transportation teams panel discussion. The leaders of the 6 winning teams demonstrated just why their teams won. These were thoughtful leaders who listened to their teams, made changes to show how they cared, and yes, even had to make difficult decisions. As TransFinder's CEO Antonio Civitella said, it is so rewarding to honor these men and women who truly do heroic work every day. You can see how much this recognition means to these teams, and that's what makes it all worth the effort. TransFinder started the Top Transportation Teams program in 2023, and it continues to get bigger and better every year. Learn more by visiting toptransportationteams.com to learn more about how your company can join the program. Also visit transfinder.com. All right, so Ryan, I know we had talked about the potential of a Super Bowl commercial elevating awareness of school bus safety. Is that really going to happen, or is that just like pie in the sky?
It's going to happen. I can't say it's going to be on the Super Bowl, but around the Super Bowl. So essentially, we had recently the 12th consecutive year of the Senate approving the month of October as School Bus Safety Month. So we, of course, have long had School Bus Safety Week, and that goes back to our good friend and school bus trainer extraordinaire, Dick Fisher, and his successful campaign with then President Nixon back in the early 70s. And really, NHTSA supports that. All of the industry associations support that. And it's this big week every year where a lot of public campaigns and news articles are generated by what school districts are doing to shine a light on school bus safety. Well, as I mentioned, this was the 12th year for School Bus Safety Month, and that is coming from the Child Safety Network. So they've been a big advocate of that. Of course, they have their children's safety bus element too, where they have training and they bring together stakeholders and work with different organizations to provide security training and safety training, safety equipment, grants and whatnot. So this element of this bill, House Resolution 484, that it was actually agreed to, interestingly enough, on November 10th, before the federal government shutdown ended. And I have a story at stnonline.com that talks about this and how this was introduced back in September, right when the government was shutting down. And that Child Safety Network was able to keep on these senators, even despite the shutdown, that they were still discussing this. And so that when they saw that it was imminent, that it was going to reopen, they went ahead and did this unanimous consent. So, what better way, Tony, than to get politicians to support kids and kids on school buses. So as you mentioned, this Super Bowl ad, it's actually going to be a PSA. So the ad council is involved. So the ad council, got milk and all the different PSAs toward public safety and health that we've seen on TV for decades and decades. They're going to be involved. So what we know of right now, it's going to be NFL themed. We'll see what that means, and it's around the Super Bowl. So there's a lot of PSAs. It seems to be the thing right now, Tony. A lot of folks working on PSAs. We've talked about Katrina Morris and the Michigan Association for Pupil Transportation, and their PSA that they completed a couple months ago with Ryan Preece, the NASCAR driver. So that's in the works, and I think some other things are coming in 2026. You mentioned NHTSA. Click it or ticket type campaign, but for illegal passing. So, and again, what we were just talking about with the National Loading and Unloading Survey, the illegal passing is one aspect of that loading and unloading safety, but certainly it's gotten a lot of people's attention. One of the sponsors of this Senate resolution, Gary Peters of Michigan, he has some federal legislation that he introduced a few months ago as well that calls for PSA on illegal passing. So hoping to see some, united fronts going forward. I mean, certainly Gary Peters being from Michigan, hoping to see him sign on with what the Michigan Association for Pupil Transportation has been doing. And, we're going to get an update here definitely at STN Expo East in Charlotte, North Carolina, Tony, with what NHTSA is doing. And I know, I mentioned that click it or ticket type PSA for illegal passing. Hopefully we can get an update on that as well, but definitely a lot of PSAs in the works.
Yeah, Ryan, those are great points. Love to see the Fed getting involved. Love to see the potential of PSA and safety messages out there in the industry to kind of raise public awareness. I think those are all, vital things for our industry and probably lacking in a big way. So to get these bigger organizations a little more galvanized around yellow school buses, safety, kids, there seems to be a lot of organizations kind of doing their own thing. And hopefully that all compounds into one big program that makes a big impact around public awareness and safety. So we'll cross our fingers and hope that comes to pass. We'll report on it when it does and keep you guys updated. But we'll dive into some more headlines. Department of Education right after this. Hey, safety is a number one priority for everyone in school transportation, and even more so when needing to communicate in a school bus setting. School radios, push to talk over cellular or POC radios, are the safety enhancement you need to provide clear communication across all aspects of your fleet. Schools, SROs, that's school resource officers, and beyond. School radio helps take safety and connectivity a step further by offering interoperability solutions that bridge conventional two-way radios with POC systems, creating a unified network that boosts effectiveness and safety. This integrated strategy guarantees smooth communication in both emergency situations and daily activities. To learn more about how school radio can improve safety in your communication methods, visit school-radio.com. That's school-radio.com. All right, Ryan, give us an update. The DOE, obviously, there's been a lot of kind of, I will call it anxiety about what is going to happen, what it means to school transportation. You have an update for us?
Yeah, well, last week, President Trump and the Trump administration announced next steps that they want to impart on dismantling the U.S. Department of Education. We've been talking about this all year, basically, since Trump retook office in January. And there has long been Republican sentiment that the Department of Education is wasteful and that certain programs need to reside in other agencies. Of course, the Department of Education, relatively young in the scope of things. The late 70s was when it first originated. And so there is precedence for education being in other departments. But certainly, it causing a lot of concern among educators. And when transportation is involved, because transportation, again, is 5 to 15% of the overall school district budget, a lot, most of the money that in form of block grants that the Department of Education puts out to states and then trickles down to school districts from there obviously go to classroom first, but certainly there is some ramifications for this, and it's early. All the folks that I was talking to last week about this they were giving me some information, and there's all these articles on USA Today and New York Times and LA Times about it, and I'm being told, hey, let's wait, let's take a breath and see how this shakes out. I've heard some different things that this could be actually a pilot and having some of these programs move off to other agencies. As of now, when you're looking at the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, that there have been no formal news on where that could reside. So that looks like that could stay at the Department of Education for a while. So the Department of Education, it doesn't seem imminent, like tomorrow it's going to be gone. And this is something that Congress also has to act on too, especially when you're looking at programs like IDEA, federal law. You have the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. That's also at play here. The early indications are that's headed over to the Department of Labor. Health and Human Services is involved. The State Department is involved, the Bureau of Indian Education. So we'll have to see how this all shakes out and what it means to transportation in terms, in the everyday operations. I don't think, you see much impact, but I think when you're looking at funding streams and how districts get Medicaid reimbursement, for example, we have an article coming out on that in the January issue, so right around the corner. So I think there's a lot of longer term planning situations or issues to look at when you're talking about dismantling a federal agency tasked with overseeing education and educational services in America. So, certainly looking to get some more clarity on that. Interestingly enough, one of my sources provided me a link to a meeting last week from an organization, a democracy organization, kind of think tank that was talking about this, and I registered. And I got kicked out because I guess, they looked and said, oh, I was media. So a lot of conversations on this. I wouldn't lose any sleep over it, Transportation Nation, especially with the holidays coming up. But as we've seen with the federal government shutdown, still a lot has to be figured out with healthcare. That's been a big issue that really drove the shutdown. Now we have this, is it a distraction? Some might say it is. So, but we know that we've seen a lot of layoffs already this year at the Department of Education, really decimated. And that's not even talking about what's happened to the Office of Head Start, which has had its budget slashed. And there's been relatively little, if any, news articles on that. So a lot of unknowns still. It seems to be that we're still talking about that, Tony, but certainly a lot to talk about at the water cooler.
Yeah, these are definitely changes that are going to impact our industry indirectly, but clearly there are big ramifications, and everybody in the industry is just kind of holding their breath to see what the trickle down effect is to school transportation. So time will tell. We'll report it as it comes out, and we got lots of great interviews coming up here in just a second with our own Taylor Ekpatani. Before we get to that, we got a quick message.
The Ride family of vehicles include the award-winning Achiever, Creator, and Dreamer battery electric school buses. The Creator is powered by STN's 2025 Best Green Technology Award winner, the Blade Battery. With safety as a central focus, Ride school buses provide immediate benefits to our communities and our children. Visit ride.co to discover the future of student transportation, or email info.na@ride.co for further product detail.
Hello, nation. Taylor Ekbatani, and happy Thanksgiving week. Super excited, to be going into the holidays, and also excited to have two guests on with me today. And they are actually the youngest directors in the state of Washington. So it's a sweet treat for you guys. But I want to welcome Cassidy Miller, the transportation director at Cashmere School District, and Bowen Mitchell, the transportation director at Entiat School District. So welcome, guys. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks so much, Taylor.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So funny little story about these two. They are dating, and I was talking to Bowen before we started, and you followed him on Instagram, his bus Instagram.
Yes. About 5 years ago, I found his bus Instagram and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I think these are Washington school buses. And I just kept following along from there. And a couple of posts later, I made a comment or two, and we started talking after commenting on one of the posts about a bus that had hit a cow. Interesting enough, just the things you'll see in rural Washington, on the east side at least. And so we hit it off from there.
3.5 years later, here you guys are.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So we've been together happily for about 3 years now, just over 3 years, friends for 5. So that's been pretty great for us.
Awesome. How do you keep the work separate when you guys go home?
We don't. Honestly, we bleed yellow. I think Bowen would agree. There is always, he's like, oh, this district just ordered this. And we're talking about options, or I'll say, hey, this option that I saw somewhere just pops into my brain, and we'll just be eating dinner. And he'll be like, oh, yeah, you could actually do that in Washington, but nobody does. And so there is really no separation. We laying in bed and be like, okay, stop telling me about the color yellow. Go to sleep.
No, I love that. That's funny. But so if you're both the youngest, obviously one of you is younger. So who is actually the youngest transportation director in the state?
That would be me. I am currently 22. Bowen just turned 24.
Okay. Wow. So tell me a little bit about your guys' stories. What prompted you? How did you get into transportation?
Go for it, Bowen.
So when I was in kindergarten, I was very interested in the bus that picked me up and the fact that they each had their own number. And I loved the organization of them. And I slowly, just over my school career, learned more about the buses themselves. And it kind of drew me towards that interest. And my senior year, I did a mentorship with the previous coordinator at Entiat School District. Her name's Vicky. She was amazing, and she taught me all about it. And that kind of just sprung me forward into really just getting a hold of what I wanted to do.
And so my start was, I was always in the front seat of the bus starting in middle school, and always paying attention to what was happening on the radio, where I lived in another district across the state. And at about the halfway point during the year, I could tell you all of the bus driver, route number, bus number combinations. And that was pretty cool because I could list them off. And whenever we had an office staff person sub on the route, they were always super impressed. In 8th grade, I got the opportunity to actually intern in their office because they were right across the parking lot from my middle school. And so that was a really cool opportunity. I was going to be an office intern for the middle school, and my bus driver said, hey, what if you were an office intern for the bus garage? Because it's right across the parking lot. That could be doable. And so I asked, and they're like, well, no one's ever asked this before. And it worked out. And once I stepped into that office and I saw just its organized chaos, I fell in love with the organization, but the unpredictability of everything. We don't know what every day is going to hold. And I really like that. Some days I don't like what the day throws at me, but I like that it keeps me on my toes. I don't get complacent with that kind of thing. And so I fell in love from there, because at that point I was going to be a special education teacher. But now after 8th grade, I said, I'm going to be a transportation director. This is my path.
That's amazing. And you just recently became the transportation director at Cashmere, correct?
I did, yes. Bowen and I both took on our roles within a month of each other. He accepted his in early June, and I was about the end of June, early July.
Okay, so were you ever at the same district, or kind of just close enough to see each other?
No, so we have been in 2 separate districts for the entire time, actually, and up until this point, living on the other side of a mountain pass from each other. And Bowen was working at a neighboring school district in the area here where we are in Central Washington. And I would drive over every weekend after I got off my shift at Snohomish School District. Every Friday, I'd leave around 5 p.m., get over, and we'd spend the weekend together. And then I would leave at 6 a.m. and make it over for my 8:30 start.
Wow.
So there was a lot of dedication and miles back and forth. And so it's really pretty cool at this point to be together full time.
Right. So you guys moved in the middle now, right? So you're each driving, what is it? Half an hour or something each way?
I'm about 15 minutes and Bowen's about 20, but we are right in the middle, the best middle that we could find between our 2 districts.
Yeah. That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about your district, because I was talking to Bowen before, so maybe you can start. But you're actually not only new to the role, but the role is new to the district.
My role has been here. Bowen's role has evolved a little bit since he's taken over. My title is just slightly different from who was in here before. It's all the same work. We understand how that goes. It's all the same behind the scenes. And so my district, about 100 square miles. I have 15 buses and I have 3 schools. We're all on a single tier system. Bowen's also single tier system. And so that was a shift for me. I came from, depending on the area of the district, 2 and 3 tier routing. And so it's funny. It feels it is quicker because you're not running 3-ish hour afternoon routes where you have stacked elementary schools and middle schools and high school. It's everything all together. But it's been a nice shift.
Oh, and tell me a little bit about your school district.
So at Entiat, we were a very, very small district, only 10 years ago, probably. And we've recently, our enrollment's probably increased by 30% at least in the past 3 or 4 years. And that's created some challenges for us as we're operating as a small district, but we can no longer support that with the way we operate, where we have our superintendent who's working with a bunch of things and me who's organizing the transportation department. So what we recently did, and something that I brought to Entiat, was I really wanted to do more in-house maintenance on our fleet, because that was something that was not happening in the past. They have to go elsewhere to get worked on. Particularly a neighboring school district does the majority of the maintenance. And it really is, that's going to get inefficient when our fleet continues to grow. Just this year, we purchased an additional bus that would add on to our 7. We now have 8 buses with 4 routes that is about to become 5, and it could expand from there depending on how enrollment increases in the next couple of years.
And you're driving every day. So I know we were talking before we started that you were kind of like a car guy, but for buses. So are you also doing maintenance?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So what do you have your hands in over there?
So right now, well, it really just varies on the day. Some days I go in and I know I need to service this bus. Some days, like today, I have a driver walk in and say he had a check engine light on one of his buses, and the turbo's starting to go off on it. So it really depends on the day, and every day is a different mystery. But
so you're transportation director, bus driver, maintenance. Are you routing, dispatching? Is it like a one-man show?
Pretty much. We do have some wonderful office gals that do the majority of the dispatching, because I'm driving every single day. So for the most part, if a driver needs help with a student, etc., they need to call them because I'm unable to assist at the time.
Wow. Yeah, you guys definitely have your hands full. And being younger, right? I kind of want to ask you how you get buy-in as a leader, how you talk to administration, how you have those conversations, right? And also how you interact with parents. How are they interacting with you? I guess, how are you getting buy-in as a leader?
Well, it can be challenging for certain aspects of it because obviously I'm 24 years old and some of my drivers that I have right now drove me when I was growing up. And now I have to lead them. And I do appreciate, I have a great staff that is really willing to look up to me. And they, especially with buses, they ask me all the time about certain bus quirks. And they really seem to appreciate what I'm able to tell them and how I'm able to guide them. Parents can sometimes be they get a little shocked sometimes when they see somebody who looks like he's in high school pull up and pick their kids up for school. But a lot of these parents, I'm fortunate enough to work for a district that I grew up in. So I know a big chunk of the community and they know me. So it's really been a great environment.
And I would say that, especially with parent calls for me, it's making sure that I listen and I validate any of the concerns that are being shared. And so that has been a shift in my customer service. That is my focus whenever I have a communication with a parent or a family member. Listen and validate their concern and explain to a degree what the follow-up will be so that they know what's coming. And it seems to leave everybody, when they leave the conversation, they're calmer, they're more prepared for whatever is our next step, whoever we're talking to or involving with the school next, or making that seating chart adjustment. And so that has been successful with my team, being straightforward, making sure that communication is constant and clear. And we just put up a new whiteboard with a really big calendar to help with communication of trips and any school-related picture day and team breakfast and all that kind of thing. It's very clear when you walk in now.
And you're a little bit bigger of an operation, right? You guys have a maintenance team.
We have our office, really, transportation is a 2-person team. It's myself and my one mechanic. And so we have a really good partnership we've built at this point and keeping everything rolling. And we step in and help each other whenever it's needed, whenever one of us needs 2 people for something, or we need to shuttle buses around or pick up a van across the district, that kind of thing. We work great.
That's wonderful. And routers, dispatchers?
That's me in my Excel spreadsheets. It's Bowen and his Google Docs or Word documents, right? So that's what we're working with right now and looking at all the angles for bus technology, because really it's endless at this point, and especially going recently to the TSD conference and seeing all of the vendors there and working with the state conference and those vendors. There's a lot of opportunities. It's finding out what fits in the budget and the key features that are desired by schools and our families in the community.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch on technology, but I also want to touch on the TSD conference. Oh my gosh, there's just so much. But you are a child passenger safety technician. You are also a 2024 Rising Star, Cassidy. So you came out to TSD. But instead of, I want to hear your perspective, but I do want to ask Bowen what you told him. Like, what was something, Bowen, that you heard from Cassidy about the conference that you were like, she took that away? Because I think it's one thing to hear something, right? But what do you say to someone else? So I'm really curious from your perspective, how you viewed the conference through Cassidy's lens.
I learned just mainly what goes on in other states versus Washington. I feel like we have a very unique pupil transportation program. And hearing from what happens in Texas, there's all the vendors are different, for example. So getting to hear about that was very interesting. Yeah. And
you were like, I was not prepared to talk about TSD.
most of it was pretty fresh to me because we have our conference here, which is amazing. And really it seems a lot different and just new stuff that is, for example, like theirs was mostly, I understand, special education was a pretty big focus there. And we don't really do that here. we have a big conference in the summer that is mostly everything combined versus just one thing. Like every bus there that they're showing in the trade show is a special needs bus.
Right.
And we just shove everything all together.
Right.
So it was really interesting seeing a very focused conference and hearing about that.
Yeah. What was some of your big takeaways, Cassidy?
So I came back and I shared with him, I shared all the pictures of the buses and the vendors that I took as I was there, and told him all about the friends that I'd made and what their fleets were like, and talking to people in Oregon and Missouri and Texas and all over, really. So one of the things we did talk about when I got back, and one of my biggest things that I was so grateful to bring back key details on, was bus stop selection, which was one of the classes. And so that really helps in a complex case that I'm working on, and just some of those really detailed, do we meet this criteria for this bus stop when it comes to transporting students who have that transportation as a related service in their IEP? Does their bus stop, especially in a rural area where we are at, does it meet those safety criteria for the student, for the bus? And so what are our options then beyond a typical bus if needed?
And I understand as a CPST, you also got to help out with the NHTSA class, which I know you were super excited about.
I'm really excited for the opportunity to bring that class to Washington here in the future, hopefully within a year, as I'm working with my other child passenger safety general statewide counterparts. So to see how we can bring that in and benefit student transporters in Washington, along with any CPSTs who would like to receive that additional training. So it was wonderful to work with Denise Donaldson. Again, we talk often, and we've worked on lots of photos and videos, just all the media for the new curriculum. So it's funny, I'm sitting in the back setting up a car seat, and I turn around, I'm like, oh, there's me on the screen. So they laughed. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Denise was the one who nominated you for the award.
It was someone who we worked closely with through NHTSA and National Safety Council.
Gotcha. Yes. And that was in reference to the 2024 Rising Star. Just wanted to give the listeners a little context. Okay. So you got to go to the conference as a Rising Star. It's kind of our new thing now. We give, main conference registration to those that are selected. But do you think that you're going to try and sneak away for TSD next year or some of our other expos?
I definitely do, especially since I came back with a registration coupon for 100% of registration covered from one of the Spin the Wheel, or one of the events. It was part of the trade show. Visiting all of the vendors, or enough vendors to receive a spin. I got a coupon for that, which was wonderful. And so I will definitely try maybe STN Expo in Reno. I know Bowen is a little jealous. He's like, you should go to Charlotte, and you should, because they have the Thomas Bus Tour, I believe, last year. We will see how it all works out here. But one way or another.
Bowen's got to go too. You got to find someone to cover your route.
Right? But no, I was so grateful for the opportunity to go to that, and then also be part of attending the trade show and collect so many vendor business cards and contacts so that I can bring that back, because I am the ESD 171 board rep for Washington Association for Pupil Transportation, and I am part of the planning committee of our main conference that we have in June every year. So I'll try and bring in a few more vendors, help out my friend Veronica with all of those she brings into the trade show.
Oh, that's awesome. Talk to me a little bit about the technology that you guys are using. You've mentioned the vendors that you got to see on the trade show. So was there anything that you're like, oh my gosh, I love that, I need that?
I am very much interested in bus tracking. Just talking to our vendors, Busrite and TransFinder, especially, just seeing what they have to offer along with routing, because we're routing in Excel and there's not really directions. It's just a route list is what I came into. So we're working on that. Also looking at certain options like GeoTab, where it would be just vehicle tracking. That would be nice. I've threatened jokingly to just put an AirTag in every bus, because sometimes they come back late at night and they're not required to check in. And I'm like, did they actually make it back? I haven't heard. So that for me is different, because I came from a district where there was that type of vehicle tracking all the time, accessible in a couple of different forms.
Mm-hmm. That's a hack right there. Don't
Right. I'm like,
the
not
air tags.
for sure how the air tags are going to work really, but I mean, I want something, so we're looking at the options for that.
Okay. What about you, Bowen? Anything that you guys have on your wish list?
I have also been looking into routing software such as Buswrite for a little while. It's really something that's probably going to take years to introduce to a district that I revamped all of our route sheets this year, and we use Google Docs for them. So we really don't have too many routes, so it's not the biggest deal, but it's not the easiest to read. Obviously, holding a piece of paper while you're trying to drive down the road is not the easiest thing in the world. And so trying to get some sort of technology in there to assist with that would be amazing. Not to mention, I'm in a similar boat as she is, where I'll have trips out late at night, and it can be, especially when I'm the one who needs to be prepared in case something goes wrong. It's really nice to know when your buses are back and safe and sound and not out without any sort of help.
Mm-hmm. So you need air tags too, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Talk about buses being out and about. In Washington State, we have this wonderful thing called mutual aid, and there's a directory that goes out to the student transporters who need it, mainly the directors and supervisors, and it has a list of all of the districts in the state and who you would contact if you needed help after hours. There was one night a couple of weeks ago, my mutual aid was in my house, and I got a call about a bus issue about an hour north of us, just north of Bowen's district, actually. And I knew my mechanic wasn't going to be available that night. So I said, let's go. It was 8:30, get out of bed, let's go. And we grabbed one of his buses. We got my driver and the volleyball team switched over to Bowen's bus. He drove mine back to his garage in fourth gear just so we could get it someplace safe. And then we went back up the next day with my mechanic and took Bowen back home that night. And he's like, yeah, that was not a fun rescue. Like, well, thanks for doing it with me, bud.
Well, that's awesome, though, both being in transportation, both being in, school districts that are so close, you can almost lean on each other. And it's kind of like the networking never stops, right? Like, right. What are you doing in your district? What can I do in my district? Have you guys had a challenge that you've worked through together, but with separate districts?
We haven't seen much direct collaboration yet beyond that one incident where we were able to share a bus just for a day or so. But we know that there's always the possibility in our region of McKinney-Vento students or other that we would need to coordinate on and have that flexibility to work with each other and our surrounding districts.
We do coordinate for certain issues, just random issues that will come up. We'll oftentimes message each other and just ask, hey, what are you doing for this? Or such as fleet replacement and any random quirks. Usually if I have a question that I know she might know, I'll message her and she'll do the same for me, depending on the topic and what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got to be great having that number that you can call. Awesome. Well, yeah, as we wrap up, people are listening to this Thanksgiving week. We're going to head into the holidays, into the new year. Is there anything that you guys are looking forward to, or, any holiday parties at your guys' districts? Anything up in the air?
Not much planned as of now. My team will probably do a team breakfast. They really like that. That was started before I came. And so we might do something closer to Christmas. And as for Bowen and I, we keep the holidays simple and go along with one side of the family or the other. Just make those plans a little closer to typically.
Yeah, pretty much the same. We don't, Entiat in the past, I believe, really hasn't done a whole lot. And I'm really looking into ways to expand to really come together. And I know they're all busy with their family as well. So I try to give them space on that.
Awesome.
It's harder when you have employees, I think, that are sharing different roles within the district. They go from bus driver down to the school to work in food service or janitorial or as a paraeducator, that kind of thing, which some of our employees, both sides do. So it makes that coordination and just the downtime. There's not really downtime for some of those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Well, I appreciate both of you guys jumping on the podcast, and thanks so much for sharing your thoughts and about your districts. And it was great to see you in person in TSD, Cassidy. And thank you so much for Bowen jumping on.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for the invite. We really appreciate it.
A special thanks to our guests for all joining the episode this week and sharing your thoughts and conversations. We also appreciate our sponsors, TransFinder, School Radio, and Ride. Visit stnonline.com for all the latest news and analysis on the school transportation industry. And don't forget to register for STN Expo East to lock in that super early bird savings. The deadline is coming up real soon in middle of December. Don't miss out. Big savings, 33% off your registration. Guys, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to listen to this podcast every week. Nation, we're here for you. We love you. We'll see you next week.